Revolutionized poetry from Carl Solomon. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through the Negro streets at dawn looking for an angry fix. Angel-headed hipsters burning for the ancient heavenly connection to the starry dynamo and the machinery of the night, who poverty and tatters and hollow-eyed and high set up smoking in the supernatural darkness of cold water flats floating across the tops of cities contemplating jazz, who bared their brains to heaven under the L and saw Mohammedan angels staggering on tenement roofs illuminated, who passed through universities with radiant, cool eyes, hallucinating Arkansas in Blake Light tragedy among the scholars of war, who were expelled from the academies for crazy and publishing obscene odes on the windows of the skull, who cowered in unshaven rooms and underwear, burning their money in wastebaskets and listening to the terror through the wall, who got busted in their pubic beards returning through Laredo with the belt of marijuana for New York, who ate fire in paint hotels or drank turpentine in Paradise Alley, death, or purgatoried their torsos night after night with dreams, with drugs, with waking nightmares, alcohol and cock and endless balls, incomparable, blind, streets of shuddering cloud, lightning in the mind, leaping towards poles of Canada and Patterson, illuminating the motionless world of time between. Peyote solidities of halls, backyard green tree cemetery dawns, wine drunkenness over the rooftops, storefront burrows of tea-head joyride neon blinking traffic light, sun and moon and tree vibrations in the roaring winter dusts of Brooklyn, ash-can rantings in the kind king light of mind, who chained themselves to subways for the endless ride from Battery to Holy Bronx and Benzedrine, until the noise of wheels and children brought them down shuddering, mouth-racked and battered, bleak of brain, all drained of brilliance in the drear light of zoo, who sank all night in submarine light of Bickford's, floated out and sat through the stale beer afternoon in desolate Fugazi's, listening to the crack of doom in the hydrogen jukebox, who talked continuously 70 hours from park to pad to bar to Bellevue to museum to the Brooklyn Bridge, lost battalion of platonic conversationalists jumping down the stoops, off fire escapes, off windowsills, off Empire State, off of the moon, yakety-yakketing, screaming, vomiting, whispering facts and memories and anecdotes and eyeball kicks and shocks of hospitals and jails and wars. Whole intellects disgorged in total recall for 7 days and nights with brilliant eyes. Meet for the synagogue cast on the pavement. Who vanished into nowhere, sent New Jersey, leaving a trail of ambiguous picture postcards of Atlantic City Hall, suffering eastern sweats and Tangerian bone grindings and migraines of China, under junk withdrawal in Newark's bleak furnished room, who wandered around and around at midnight in the railroad yard, wondering where to go, and went, leaving no broken hearts, who lit cigarettes in boxcars, racketing through the snow towards lonesome farms in grandfather night, who studied Plotinus, Poe, St. John of the Cross, telepathy, and Bob Kabbalah, because the cosmos instinctively vibrated at their feet in Kansas, who wandered through the streets of Idaho seeking visionary Indian angels who were visionary Indian angels, who thought they were only mad when Baltimore gleamed in supernatural ecstasy, who jumped in limousines with the Chinamen of Oklahoma on the impulse of winter midnight street like small-town rain, who lounged hungry and lonesome through Houston seeking jazz or sex or soup, and followed the brilliant Spaniard to converse about America and eternity, a hopeless task, and so took ship to Africa, who disappeared into the volcanoes of Mexico, leaving behind nothing but the shadow of dungarees and the lava and the ash of poetry scattered in fireplace Chicago, who reappeared on the West Coast, investigating the FBI, in beards and shorts, with big pacifist eyes, sexy in their dark skin, passing out incomprehensible leaflets. Thank you.
From his book, Some of the Dharma. It's called A Sermon I Would Deliver Under the Greenville, Mississippi Tree if I were William Faulkner and had just received the Nobel Prize for Literature. Written August 31st, 1954. I would quit my mansion in Oxford and walk forth and sit gawkers, hobos, lingerers, and children. I would preach the escape from suffering of this world, the escape from the enslaving desires that cause suffering. I would preach the lifting of painted curtains of delusion before the eyes of the mad. I would preach freedom, peace, loving kindness of the child. I would preach poverty, simplicity, gladness of heart. I would preach purity, naturalness, long-suffering patience. Pain is the shroud of ignorance, I teach. I preach the joy of the mind. I preach the teaching of all the Buddhas of old. I wear the robe and carry the mold of the Buddhas of old. I preach the ancient wisdom of the Tao Chinese. I preach the end of sin, the abolishment of evil death by payment of good, as preached by our Lord Jesus, the Messiah of the Western world. I preach quietness, thought, prayer in the night. I preach the importance of salvation of all the living, and the dread on rebirth and starting all over again in another decaying body in this deadly, poison, fatal world. I preach that birth equals death, that birth is painful, death is painful. I preach the end of suffering by preaching the cessation of enslavement to the desire to be rich, the lust to fornicate, to kill, to lie, to cheat, the passion for ambition degrading others. I preach for an end to greed, rage, and miserable, doubtful, continual compromise. I preach equality and unity in the escape from this prison camp of decay. I preach the dream of existence, the apparition of the world, that all things are risen from the mind. I preach the discovery, the unwrapping, the revealment and retainment of the true mind. I preach the recognition that what appears to be, that it is, in reality, empty from atom to infinite, that it is a void, that there is no space, only void, no time, only void, no self, only void. I preach that pain appears to hurt, evil appears to damage, good appears to please. I appeal to the belly of heaven. For inward destruction of our pain, I preach that all things are only from mind's own imagination and from no other revealable source. Come to destruction they do, only because of their original and ignorant construction. I preach the end of dependence on imaginary pleasures that create unhappiness, the end of dependence on things that are only invited in the mind, the end of dependence on outward influences. I preach the going in of the people of the world into their own pure, solitary, untouched minds, to seek and find repose there, waiting, to realize the meaning of what's happening by means of their own pure, universal intuition. I preach the independence from all false education, propaganda, and organized entertainment. I preach the still, pure, true enjoyment of the original and perfect nature of man, which comes, goes, and never returns, like a cloud in the blue sky. I preach imitation of the submissive cloud floating in the blue sky, slowly being restored to its original emptiness. I preach man's imitation of space, man's infinite mind seeking perfect restoration. I preach non-involvement in the tangles of the blind who are not minding their own business.